Hey, what's going on? And welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour, a podcast where we talk to interesting people about interesting things in the world of pop culture. And this week we have got one of my personal heroes, one of my favorite singers in the world, from one of my favorite bands in the world. I've been a fan of this band for as long as I can remember. I'll never forget picking up their album when I was 13 or 14 years old, and I've been obsessed ever since. And I'm talking about Simple Minds. We have the lead singer of the band, Jim Kerr, joining us this week on the Rockman Power Hour. Oh my God. Can I have some applause? I was hoping as a producer, you were going to be able to put in applause, not just you applauding. That's my co-host, Ryan Stick. How are you, Ryan?
Applauding.
Yeah. Can you fly in some applause, please?
Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
Thank you. That is applause that is worthy of Jim Kerr.
Perhaps we need some fake studio laughter sometimes to lube up our jokes.
Cue in some fake studio laughter.
Tell me all about Simple Minds. What does Simple Minds mean to you? Because I see the way your eyes light up. Yeah.
Simple Minds mean everything to me. So much so that I this is an episode where I'd almost want to bring Julia in and have her. You know what? Let me go. Julia, you have a second? This is very unconventional, and usually Julia doesn't come anywhere out from behind the scenes. But this week she's coming. She's coming. She's on her way. Here she comes. All right. We're going to have to just pop a squat here, Julia. We'll move the UFC belt out of the way. Here, sit right over here. All right. So this is my co-host. This is our producer, Julia Kajerski, who's a lot. She's actually taller than she appears. She's just right. This is my young child, Julia. She's 6 years old. This is Julia. Julia, what we're talking about Simple Minds. And Ryan asked me, what does Simple Minds mean to me personally? Because he saw my eyes light up. I want you to tell Ryan the story of when we first interviewed Jim Kerr all those years ago in the basement at Metropolis. Tell Ryan my reaction.
Well, Ryan, so I knew their songs, but I had no idea what they looked like. Right? So I'm sitting with these guys and I don't know who they are. And I'm just talking like as if, for me, Jason's got a smile like this. For him, it's like, talking to his idols. And I'm just like, yeah, and he just couldn't believe like that, we were sitting there talking to Jim Kerr and what's his name? Charlie
Burchill.
Yeah. There you go.
Tell him what you were talking to Charlie about.
Beer?
No, whiskey and beer.
Whiskey, yeah.
You didn't say how much he likes whiskey. You were saying you love beer.
And we had a beer together.
Right. So she's getting sauce with Simple Minds. And I'm like, thank God Simple Minds didn't want to take her home.
No.
All right. Thank you, Julia, for making a guest appearance on the Rockman Power Hour.
No problem.
You can go now.
All right.
You can go now. Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, Julia. There was a second part to that story where maybe I remember it more than she does, but yes, there was that part where we were in the dressing room and Julia was like, who are these old dudes we're talking to? And they seem so nice. I'm like, these are Simple Minds, Julia. Like, this is a huge moment for me. And but when I was sitting downstairs waiting for Jim Kerr to come for the interview, he walked down the stairs and he had this really nice beige trench coat on. And he always dresses really sharply. He always looks really well put together. And he came down the stairs and I saw him appear from the stairs. And I was like, oh, and I almost cried.
Wow.
And Julia looked at me. She goes, and she's not telling, she forgot this part of the story. She looks at me. She goes, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm like, it's Jim Kerr. You don't understand. She's like, and like, come on. Like, I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's Jim Kerr. She had no idea. She didn't know anything really about the band besides Don't You Forget About Me. So, so this is a huge moment for the podcast and for me as a lifelong fan, because I love this band. They've been that band that's been with me for every period of my life. And it's always that comfort music that I go back to. There's so much more about them than the Breakfast Club song.
Of course.
They didn't even write that song. And they didn't even want to use that song. They were approached by somebody who wanted to place them in a soundtrack and get them more attention in America. And they met with a guy who was a songwriter, and he's like, listen, I'm a huge Simple Minds fan. I've got every record of yours. I love this band. I wrote this song that'll be perfect for you. So imagine you're a Simple Minds fan. You love Simple Minds. You want to get one of their songs placed into a soundtrack. You've got a beeline to get on that soundtrack because you know someone who's producing the movie. And you're like, I'm going to write a song for fucking Simple Minds that's going to get them on the soundtrack. And they agree to do it. And it becomes their biggest hit. Mind-boggling. But there's a lot to this band. They started off as they're from Scotland. They started off as an art rock band, which Jim will, alludes to when we're talking. And they're just one of those bands that just kicks ass. And I saw them when I was 15 years old. And then they didn't come back to Canada for years. And when they finally came back and I was working at Show'em, I went and I interviewed them at Metropolis. And it was just an incredible experience. So to have them on the podcast, a couple of weeks before their new album, actually their new album is coming out this Friday. This is really, really cool. So without any further ado, Ryan, here is me and Jim Kerr. And you will see I'm very, very happy in this interview. Hey, how are you? I can hear, but I cannot see.
You can hear, but you can't see. That's probably a good thing. But but let's see if we can spoil it for you.
Okay. There he is.
How about that?
That's great. How are you?
Very good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good. So we met in Montreal when you did your first show back in Montreal after the lengthy hiatus. I don't know if you remember.
All righty.
And I came to Toronto the next night. Good
man.
Yeah. Good to see you again.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you for having me back. Dear Jason.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited to have you. I've had a chance to sit with Direction of the Heart, and I really, really like the record. And I find that the more I've gotten a chance to get into it, and I've gotten into it, and I'm a bit of a Simple Minds nerd. Okay.
Great.
I mean, I go way, way back.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
So I tend to analyze a little bit, and I tend to hear things maybe the casual listener won't hear. And I heard a lot of stuff in here that made me say, these guys are getting a little sentimental. And it was nice. And so I do,
age.
but I do want to dive into some of the stuff on the record. But first off, how does it feel to be back? With the potential of doing shows again, with things kind of opening up and the world being a little bit normal, it must feel good.
Ecstatic. I mean, really, the whole world went through the most mind-boggling experience ever. Mm-hmm. Certainly something that none of us could ever, I don't think, imagined outside of a Philip K. Dick novel or something. But, no, it you could feel it in the air at the gigs as well. Not only band and the crew, audiences. There was definitely an extra free zone just that being back. And for us, this is what we do with our lives. It was weird to have it come crashing to a halt.
Yeah.
And then especially those first couple of months where the hype was at a peak, people will never travel again. People will never go to cinemas or theaters again. But, it was like, geez, really? And who knew, because it was that overwhelming. So, it's not that we ever didn't enjoy it before. We've always tried to, appreciate the opportunity that we have, but I think we all appreciate it just that little bit more.
And the thing with this band is that you guys have always been working. Since you guys have kind of gotten back into this zone of record tour, you haven't stopped. I mean, the last 20 years has been very, very busy for Simple Minds, especially let's say the last 15. It's just been, you guys have been working, prolific, putting out records. So I imagine when you do have to stop and you're having so much fun, it's like, why?
Well, yeah, I mean, but again, thankfully, the nature of our work meant that we could, because we were actually on tour about 10 dates in.
Right. I remember that.
When it came, crashing to a halt and we all found ourselves suddenly back home. But, after a couple of months when we thought, I remember that was like March and we thought, well, we'll be back out in the summer.
Yeah.
Once the summer came, It's like, no, we're not back out in the summer. And you know what? They're saying we won't be back out next summer either. What are we going to do? Well, as I say, fortunately, although there was still, we had to jump through hoops and we had to deal with legislations and countries opening and shutting and bubbles and all that stuff. We had to get on with being creative because that really is, we couldn't just sit it out. We just couldn't do that. So within a few months, I mean, Charlie was always working. That's a great thing, that technology, as this is as well.
Of course.
Charlie kept working away and sending me stuff, and I was revising older ideas that we had, and we were, as soon as we get the chance to get in a room together, we're just going to get on with this. And within a few months, we could travel to certain places. And I guess the results of that is direction of the heart, because we probably spent the best part of a year locked in a room together. And thankfully, we get on.
Right. So, I was going to say, you get along, so that's a good thing.
That always helps, yeah.
And I imagine that when you do get a chance to be intimate together in a room where you're able to be together and you are such old friends and good friends, it's got to be nice in a way to have no distractions and to be able to say, hey, I know normally we would have this engagement, we'd have to go to this, but now we can just really focus. And in a way, all the noise just goes away, and you can sit and really do what you guys first found the love to do together.
That is so true. I mean, it's an interesting question to ask yourself. So what are the positives that come out of this COVID experience? I mean, one of the things live, for instance, there is that I was actually worried about not singing for 2 years because, there's a lot of muscles you're using. And if you're not using them, common sense tells you that, it's hard to get it up to scratch again and all that. So I was worried about that. However, it would seem, first of all, it wasn't an issue, and it would seem that maybe I even benefited from the rest.
Right.
From having because you don't think about that. It's all right building muscles and all that, but you do need to take a rest. So coming back, far from that side of things being, but in relation to what you're saying there, there's an interesting thing. I was thinking about how in the early days, because this is also the 40th anniversary coming up of New Gold Dream. And I was thinking about that record, how we made it. And I was thinking about those records at that time we made it and who we were. And of course, what we were was we were young guys with nothing else in our lives.
Right.
So you've really got that burn, no wonder. It doesn't matter who you are, Bob Dylan or whatever, Bruce Springsteen, those first 3 or 4 records were 100% commitment.
Yeah.
Nothing to lose. 24 hours a day. Just can't believe anyone's giving you money to have a recording studio.
Yeah.
So you do it all. Fast forward a bit if you're lucky enough to have success. Fast forward a bit if you're lucky enough to have the other things that most people in life need, family and all that. Oh, that's great. But that's a bit of a distraction as well.
Right.
Because there's only so much time in the day. And whereas before you were, totally committed to that. Anyway, the point being was that during COVID, there was nothing else to do. There was absolutely nothing else happening.
Yeah.
There was nothing happening. No, even the football games and all that. There was nothing happening. So it was like, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
And also in relation to what I was saying there, our kids are grown up and all that now. So we can, all those responsibilities are kind of passed by now. Grandkids maybe, but point being was we were in a room together, laser focused on the work.
Kind of like in the old days.
And I think you can feel some of that commitment in the record as well, where we really got the bit between our teeth again.
So it's a great segue to one of the questions I wanted to ask about the record. And I do have some questions about some of the songs, but Human Traffic. There is some stuff that's going on with the vocals that brought me right back to something off Sister Feeling Call, 70 Cities as Love Brings the Fall. And there's just seems to be an approach on the record where there's these interesting harmonies that you used to do, where there was a low and a high and that are mixed in there. And I see them. I don't see them. I hear them on this record a lot. And I don't know if that has to do with you guys being back in that room, being laser focused with no other responsibilities, but some of that came out in the music. And I don't even know if you realize it or if this was a conscious thing. But when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, this is like stuff from 1981 that I'm hearing that's coming back into the music. And it makes sense. It's your music. But am I anywhere close to the mark on this?
Well, I think there is stuff going on with the vocals on this that either hasn't been around for a long time,
right,
or is even maybe perhaps taking something that hasn't been around for a long time and elaborating on it. Because I think the harmony thing you're talking about, I think they're one of the highlights of the record, and we did use them in most of the songs. We borderline almost got carried away with it, but it sounded really good and became such a feature of the record. Yeah, in those early records, there are some of the quite eccentric vocals going on, were kind of fearless and tried stuff. Sometimes it worked better than others, but I think in general, this is it's very much an art rock record again.
Yes, it is. It is.
And that really is the roots of Simple Minds, and it's the roots of some of the records I think you've got by your side there. I mean, as the band developed beyond that, okay, that's art rock. That's not rock and roll. When you get to something like Waterfront, that's rock.
Right.
But the stuff you've got in your hand there's art rock, and there's a pop element, but it's quirky. You mentioned Human Traffic there. I mean, on one hand, one part of me thinks, well, listen to that chorus and it's an out and out pop song.
Oh yeah. Well, but it's it's almost like a marriage of the stadium anthem rock and the art rock beautifully together. And but it makes sense because you're taken from yourselves. So it's okay.
Well, that's right. We're taking those components and it's also got a kind of wink when it's really having fun, but at the same time, what other pop song would have a chorus where the lyric is high on fumes and misery? Yeah. And yet it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think, it's like, who's going to punch the air to that? As it's playing, I want to punch the air and I go, high on fumes and misery? But is that not the world we are in?
Right.
And is that, is that not the dichotomy of trying to keep positive within this crazy world we're particularly in right now? I think
it's a great record. I love the track. I find that if you guys, you couldn't have done a better job on the track listing and the track running order. It just really does bring you somewhere. You start off with Vision Thing, which is the single that people are listening to, but then you go to First You Jump, and First You Jump is just so catchy, and it's just so wow. It's and the one word I wrote when I listened to it after 2 or 3 times was just wow, because it really just has this wow factor to it. But there are a lot of dark underlining themes in this record, which are very ironic with the happy feel that you're getting from the music.
I think there's a really sweet spot between light and dark, sweet and sour, sad and happy. There's a really sweet spot somewhere to be found in all those polemics. And if you can get it in music, for instance, the first track, Vision Thing, you'll know from reading and stuff, just as we started the record, and that was the first piece of music, we were only days in when we found out the news that my dad hadn't been feeling that great and everything was so much worse than we'd imagined. And that, it then overshadowed the next week or 2 weeks. But he was adamant, and we were working nearby. He lived only 15 minutes away. We were working in my place. He lived only 15 minutes away. It would have driven him crazy if we stopped working or had down tools and stuff. So we would work, and then even though he's my dad, he's my best friend. And as it turns out, Charlie, who lived in the same street as me since we were an 8-year-old kid, he knew my dad his whole life. And as he grew up, my dad was his friend as well. It wasn't just my dad.
Yeah.
So we were kind of shattered, but you got to work. And the first song I realized, at the end of the day, I'd go up and he would talk and he would reminisce and all this stuff. He knew he didn't have a long time to live and wanted to express stuff. And you know, when you're writing, I always wrote in the morning, got up early, and I would write whatever was coming out me. And it was so much influenced by the stuff he was saying.
Right.
And I realized I was writing a song about him. I'll tell you a funny bit of this is that I was sleeping next bedroom to him. As I was listening on the headphones, I was banging my feet. And as I took up, he would scream through, "You're making me fucking crazy with this noise." And I can't say to him, "Shut up, I'm writing a song about you," because that's just not the kind of people we are.
Right.
But he said, "What is this thing you're playing?" And I shall play you it. That sounds pretty good. I think that'll be good, Dad. I said, "Well, let me work on it then. Quit kvetching." And the song, from when I told my friend I'd written this song about Dad who passed away, and let me hear it. When I sent him it, he came back to me. He said, "I'm not disappointed. I thought it would be." I said, "You thought it would be some forlorn ballad, sentimental. That's not Dad." Yeah. And it's a celebration of life. And it's a celebratory vision thing. It's the vision he gave us, but not just him. It's a vision, our teachers, we came from a great, I see your dog there.
Yeah, she just came back from a walk.
Great. It's a song about all the people who influenced us.
Sure.
So the first verse is Dad, but then it gets more expansive. But that's the point, when you say there are certain things, a song like Who Killed Truth Anyway? Well, apart from the pandemic and all that, when you think of the political scenes in the last few years as well and all that, I mean, that's the stuff that comes out of you. But somehow I always feel with Simple Minds, that's when I say the sweet spot, it somehow is still uplifting. There's still a feeling
always.
All things must pass.
Always. And it's always been music that's given me hope and that's given me, it just brings me joy.
That's a wonderful thing.
And it's the truth. And, all these stories you're telling me, I find it incredible how, you're talking about writing a song and your dad, at the age you're at, your dad's getting mad at you about banging your feet. I mean, that's probably something that would have happened to you when you first started the band. So it's incredible how it's all full circle.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking that whole scene. I bought the house he was in, and I would say to him, "Shut up, I bought the house." And he would say to me, "I gave you the first £100 to start the band," which was true. So we would have this, this thing. And my dad always encouraged, we could swear or anything. He didn't care about that stuff. Yeah. He cared that we read books. He cared that we would be keen on education. He cared, but we were just like guys, and he loved the band as well. He loved Simple Minds. He loved the fans. He thought it was a positive thing as well, and nothing made him happier than when we were producing. So it was sad, but it was all good as well.
Yeah. No, I know. I lost my dad about 4 years ago. And it's a really weird thing to happen because it's really the end of something. And then all of a sudden I look at my son and I look at him through very different lens. And it's amazing the things that I'm seeing him do that I'm like, I understand now why my dad would get upset when I would do that. And I can't tell him because he's only going to understand if he's ever in my situation. But it's life is a trip. And I really think that, we're talking about positive things from the pandemic. I think the positive thing that I got from the pandemic was realizing that there are certain things that are more important than the things I thought were important. And it's family and it's friends and it's how you spend your time. And the fact that you guys spent your time writing this record is great because I think people are really going to dig it.
We hope so. I mean, listen, when you do the records and say really it's all message in a bottle stuff. Yeah. We have no, music is subjective. We have a certain confidence that, and this is the opposite of arrogance. We have a certain confidence that if we like something, there's a chance other people might like it too. first of all, you hope they get to hear it, but it's a chance they might like it too, because what's so special about us? So if we like it, there's a good chance. But I felt in terms of, we could tell within the culture, we hoped we weren't kidding ourselves on, but it all sounded good coming out the speakers, and there's a few records. Some records you have to wrestle to the ground.
Yeah.
Some records you go in and you yourself might be lacking confidence or lacking energy or whatever, but all of that stuff was there. And Charlie was coming up with great tunes. We had the time to kick the tires on them.
Yeah.
Quite a few. We thought that's finished. Then a week later we'd go, it's not finished. There's a difference between good and great, and we have to get nearer great. So we had the commitment, the desire, and all of those things you kind of take for granted when you're 18. But when you're older and you've been around the block a few times, and are we going to really go at this? Are we going to drive ourselves nuts trying to get this right? Yeah, we are. And that was kind of the attitude.
You mentioned it's the 40th anniversary of New Gold Dream this year. I saw that there was something planned. I don't know if the show's been played already, but I couldn't get to it because it was too far away. But is there a plan to celebrate that record this year?
Well, you know what? We did. The last date of the tour was in Edinburgh,
right,
2 weekends ago.
That was the one where you did the full record.
We played New Gold Dream in its entirety. That sounds very sort of pompous, but it's actually quite a short record.
Yeah.
8 songs and an instrumental. So it was 42 minutes or whatever. But it was beautiful, and there was a special feeling that night. And amongst a special feeling every night, but there was a really special feeling that night with people that, for a lot of people, that is the Simple Minds landmark record, even if it's not our most commercial. So that was something. We're actually due to film a special one of these things of where the band play their classic albums.
Sure.
And we're due to film that in about 2 weeks' time. We're not doing. There's a beautiful place outside of Glasgow called Paisley Abbey. We're doing it there, and there's no crowd. And I'll tell you why. There's no. Wow, that sounds a bit mean. You're going to play this thing, and there's New Gold Dream has this kind of subtlety to it, that if there's a crowd in there, I'll end up jumping up and down and asking for audience response and all of that stuff. And that's not what that record is about. So we're going to set up, it's in a really beautiful place, beautiful light, stained glass windows and all that, coinciding with the kind of artwork, the New Gold Dream Celtic artwork. And so that's going to be something. Unfortunately, the tour that we just finished, obviously, was postponed from 2 years ago. This was the time to do it.
Right.
So it kind of meant that New Gold Dream got kind of edged out as this thing was obliged to happen. So there hasn't quite been the song and dance we would like to have made about it. But through time, we actually have a classical recording of it as well. And we're trying to find the right time to put that out. Done at Abbey Road and all that stuff. But, it's this thing after 2 years now, it's like there's this glut of activity and let's get it right. So we got to go next month or October with Direction of the Heart and give it a little space and, do some jumping up and down on its behalf. And then, we'll get back to New Gold Dream.
And that's one of the things when you have, the catalog that you guys have, and the celebrations of these records that people want to have. And it's, it's commonplace now with bands that do have extensive catalogs and popular catalogs. People want that celebration of that recording. And, as much as you said, the pompous, like we're going to play it in its entirety, that's what fans love.
Yeah.
So, I think
we want events.
That's one of the issues you're going to have is that, the anniversaries of some of these records that are coming up are important records in people's lives. Like, Sparkle in the Rain. That's an album you're going to have to do in front of people because you're going to have to be. That's a very uplifting record.
Well, it's a loose thought, but it's not a bad thought. And since you're such a connoisseur, I get the feeling you'll like this idea. But since in the next 2 or 3 years, because those records were made in such a short space of time, couldn't we just do a gig of all 3 albums?
Yes.
New Gold Dream, Sparkle, and Once Upon a Time.
Yes.
And because they're all quite short records, so, it would be extensive, but not like, Please Let Me Go Home extensive. And it looked pretty good on a poster.
It definitely would. I think that's the other thing I like about you is that you guys you're not afraid to celebrate the past, but stay firmly planted in the present with new records like Direction of the Heart. So I think it's nice because some bands will rest on their laurels and say, well, we wrote our best stuff 40 years ago. Let's just celebrate that. But you seem like you constantly want to be creating. I know you did Direction of the Heart. Was there other stuff that didn't make it to this record that since you had the time to sit together, I can just see by your expression that there is.
My 2 favorite songs didn't make it. How about that?
Really?
Really, yeah. And when I say my 2, just 2 songs that I thought they're the ones. And we'll get back to them. And really I think, well, there's, including the sort of bonus tracks, I think there's 11 tracks there, but we probably worked on 22. Okay. I'd say, easily 6 could have swapped with what's on in terms of quality. So it wasn't wheat and chaff. The quality was really, but there was a feeling of certain songs somehow didn't fit quite as well with others,
right?
Lyrically. And my 2 favorite songs in the end, I had to concede, were a bit outsider, and had they gone on, I think they might have become other people's favorite songs too, or an amount, but it's a different movie.
Yeah.
It's a different movie. And so, hey, listen, it's not bad to kickstart things again, thinking, oh, my 2 favorite songs. It feels to me we would be starting with 2 aces.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing.
I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today. I hope that there's going to be some dates announced for North America. Otherwise, I'm going to have to look for travel arrangements.
And you're in Montreal just now?
Yeah.
You bet. Well, I mean,
yeah.
So Montreal, places like that, geez, the support they gave Simple Minds in the early days, I can't tell you.
Yeah. Well,
because it was always ahead of the game. It was always ahead of the States.
I mean, the station, the radio station that I work for, Shom, was one of the first stations to play you in North America, and
of course,
Ruben Fogel, one of the first people to bring you here. I mean,
of course,
it's still legendary when.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, those guys really gave us a break.
Yeah, for me, it was all about Love Song way before it was about Don't You Forget About Me. So, But Jim, thanks so much for taking the time. Direction of the Heart is a great record. I can't wait for people to hear it, and I'm really, really glad that you got that special time to spend with Charlie and to be able to spend that time with your dad. Because if there wouldn't have been a pandemic, you might have been somewhere else and not been able to do that. So I think everything kind of worked out.
That's right. Listen, Dad was unlucky. When I think of kids that lose their parents much younger, my heart really goes out to them. Yeah, we had the greatest time. Lovely, Jason. Thank you very much. Great talking to you.
You too. Thanks again.
All right, pal. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, happy you seemed, sir.
Right?
Happy you seemed. It's, I've heard this amazing thing the other day about just, and they're not a one-hit wonder by any stretch of the imagination. They've had a long, incredible career, but it's interesting how some people spend their entire life trying to play a song that will last forever.
Yes.
And then as soon as they get there, then they spend the rest of their career trying to make sure that that's not the only song that people know them from.
Right.
And it's interesting how they, as you're telling me, kind of got into this Don't You Forget About Me song, not kicking and screaming, but with some reluctance. And I'm trying to think like I'm trying to think if like the only song, well, not the only song, but if a song like a poser like me would hear and recognize them for is a song that they initially didn't even want representing them in the first place. What that does, you
Yeah,
know?
it's funny, and a lot of people don't know that. They just assume that they wrote it.
Mm,
But they put out Once Upon a Time after, and that album, Alive and Kicking. Everybody knows that song. They had some huge hits after that, and they're a band that they're really a band that has a very, very, very loyal fan base. They've been putting out albums for a long, long time, and
mhm.
I got really excited when Jim alluded to a tour where they would play 3 albums, the Holy Trinity, a lot of people call them in the Simple Minds world. They would play New Gold Dream, Sparkle in the Rain, and Once Upon a Time. They're all about 40 minutes long, so it would be a perfect show. You would have a little over two and a half hours of Simple Minds, and it would be those 3 albums. So he mentions that, and I'm wondering if that's what's going to happen, because they have been known to pay tribute to records. They played all of New Gold Dream recently in Scotland. So we'll see if that happens. And I'd be very, very happy if they do a tour where they play all 3 of those records. That'll be mind blowing. I'll definitely try to go to 2 or 3 of those shows. And when they came to Montreal, I went the next day to go see them in Toronto.
Okay.
I took the train, and they invited me. Do you want to come to Toronto tomorrow? I was like, yes. And I got on a train the next day, and I went to Toronto, and it was an incredible night.
It's like yeah. Can I come on your bus? It's like, no, take the train back.
Yeah, well, we weren't really friends. You know what I mean?
No.
It wasn't like a Mastodon situation where Bill's like, hey, ride the bus with me, and I was like, really? But no, this was more like I just met them the night before.
It's like, Bill, I would ride in the back of your bus on skis if it means I don't have to pay for a train ticket.
No, I would take the train. All right. Well, look, thanks for humoring me on this one. This meant a lot. And I want to thank all of you for listening. I want to thank my co-host, Ryan Stick, for Julia Kajerski, our producer, who you finally got to see behind the scenes for a second there, who didn't entirely remember the story the way I did. That's why you need to have people around you that remember things. And that's why I guess you kind of, it just shows you how certain people remember certain things a different way. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'll remember something from your own perception. I'll remember it from my perception.
Yeah, it's amazing how sometimes stories, especially if people who tend to put a little rosé on every story they tell, they kind of remember the exaggerated version of it. But to Julia, she's like, oh yeah, that time we met that band Jason likes, and we talked about booze, I think. You, who probably replayed every exact moment of that conversation later as you went to sleep that night.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thinking, wow, I can't believe I met Simple Minds. Remember when they said this, and this?
Yeah.
You put more data into the computer that is your brain of what happened, and she did a quick scan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Beer and dudes. That was it. All right. Well, thanks to her, and thanks to you, and thanks to our sponsor, Heartbeat Hot Sauce, to Studio House Designs for always making us look good. And we'll see you next time on the Rockman Power Hour.